Well, hey, it's Wes, and today we're having a look at the massive Freewell Sherpa system for mostly iPhones, but they're expanding the product lineup. We tested it on the iPhone 14 Pro, not Max. We're going to go through all the components of the system. We have magnetic VND, magnetic mist filter, the grip, the anamorphic system. They really went all out on this. Now, unfortunately, not everything's perfect, and we'll get into that. Starting with the basis of the system, the case. Now, Freewell is, at this point, pretty well known for making high-quality magnetic attaching filters. We have a case that does do magnetic attachments, but it's also kind of a snap-on thing. This is something that you're going to be daily driving on your phone all the time, because you don't want to have to get the case off and on. That would defeat the whole purpose of the entire system if you just couldn't leave the case on all the time. And I'm happy to report this is a really good case. You have some just slightly squishy TPU around the sides. The plastic back feels kind of atrocious, but that's not the most important part, thankfully. More importantly, on the inside of the plastic back, you do have MagSafe along with the alignment magnet. Not all cases have the alignment magnet. Up on the top, you have this very beefy magnetic mount attachment system. So let's put our phone in here. There we go. And as you can see, it makes a big deal of your camera bump. And that is obviously the biggest downside of this. They made this as small as they could, but number one, it makes your phone heavier. Number two, it makes it thicker. The case itself is, for me, pretty much the perfect size for a case. Just enough size for a little bit of protection. This is my usual case, which weighs almost nothing. This Pitaka carbon fiber one weighs almost nothing, has just enough ridge to keep things safe. This one, big advantage for it, you have some really nice metallic buttons that are perfectly clicky and separated. Oh, that's nice. And along the bottom here, you have the vent cutouts so that when you're holding the phone, you can actually hear what's coming out of the speakers. Not all cases have that. You have, for the telephoto lens and the main lens, snap-on points for this. It goes on, so you're turning lefty-tighty, righty-loosey, and there's a reason for that, so that when you go to unscrew the filters, you're actually tightening the lens on. Now, there is a set point for this. You can feel it kind of click down, and it goes slightly beyond that set point after it's clicked down. This is unfortunate. Because it's an anamorphic lens, the horizontal alignment is incredibly important. And so you have to open up your camera and then make sure, and you can tell by the way that it's warping or compressing the frame, that you have it just right in the middle. Now, with things connecting on such a small scale here, I don't know if they could make the contact more positive, but it would be nice if it was. Now, you can see I have a gold ring here. That's because I have a gold bloom anamorphic. It also comes in a blue one, which is a more typical anamorphic, but I prefer the gold and I chose that myself. This snaps on, not magnetic, and the filters that come onto the anamorphic lens also screw on. There's a lot of screwing going on here. It would be fantastic if these were magnetic, but I assume that they were too small to fit the magnets inside, which is a shame. It comes with a UV filter on it, but in this box, we also have ND8, 16, 32, and 64. And as you can see here, we've got a lot of squeeze going on in this lens. I was actually surprised by the squeeze factor on this. It gets you very wide. So we have a 23-24mm lens in the iPhone main camera. When you squeeze that, you are going very wide while maintaining an interesting shallow depth of field, because in the iPhone 14 camera, you have a pretty big sensor. So when you get close up to that, it can look shallow. Now, it's really nice to use this in cinematic mode, but there's a big downside there. Cinematic mode makes heavy use of the time of flight sensor, which is built into the back of the phone here. However, when you put this on the main camera, the time of flight sensor is almost entirely blocked, as you can see. You put it on the telly, it's kind of visible, but it doesn't really work, which makes the telephoto lens almost useless when you're going through the anamorphic because it struggles to focus. It makes it worse having an adapter on it and partially blocking the time of flight sensor. Now, you can't use this with the ultra wide because it's just too wide to snap anything onto like this. How does it look? How does the anamorphic look? I made a video comparing this to a 24mm full frame lens. So we have a 24mm on the camera, but it gets way wider when you slap the anamorphic on it. Let's hit it.
Oh, in this world, it's just us. You know, it's not the same as it was. In this world, it's just us. You know, it's not the same as it was. As it was. As it was. You know, it's not the same. Answer the phone. You know you're no good alone. Why are you sitting at home on the floor? What kind of pills are you on?
So as you can see, we have some blurriness at the top, blurriness at the bottom, it falls off on the sides, and it is very wide. It is incredibly wide. And if you have a face in the frame, it can often do the cinematic mode, but if it's just an object or anything like that, it cannot figure it out. But there are algorithms inside the phone designed to make the faces work very well for that. Let's take a closer look when it comes to the flares and do some comparisons here side by side so that we get a really empirical look at that. And as you can see, the worst flares are just built into the phone's camera. So that reflection, that's not from our system. So just ignore that. That's just built into the iPhone, unfortunately. But the flares they are powerful, but it depends on what you're using and how much you're kicking up the light from behind. But I was surprised by the overall sharpness here. If we take some pictures using the 48 megapixel RAW mode, which is, way more resolution than any smartphone sensor has any right to have, you can see we are losing sharpness. If you're up close, it gets very blurry, but if you're just a moderate distance away, say more than 3 feet away, it starts to look surprisingly sharp. If you're shooting in 4K, there is very little distinguishing it from the iPhone sensor, but a lot of that has to do with just the aggressive over-sharpening built into the iPhone, unfortunately. And so generally when I take footage out of the stock iPhone video, if I'm shooting in 4K, I will run it through just a little bit of blur, a little bit of Gaussian effect, because that over-sharpening is just off the handle. But if we take pictures, it doesn't hold up to a full 48 megapixel by any means. But then again, one of the points of going with anamorphic look is that you don't want it to be razor sharp. You want it to have a little bit of an ethereal effect to it. So it gets a little more blurry on the sides, but it's pretty darn sharp in the middle. I was quite surprised by that, because not only do you have to create sharp optics in this tiny package, but it has to align with what is in the phone in the first place. Very tight tolerances here to make that happen. I have to mention one of my elephants in the room, and that is that unlike on, say, Samsung, there is no Pro mode built into the iPhone camera system. You have to go with something like Filmic Pro. And Filmic Pro, which I paid for a while ago, the full Pro license, they've gone to a monthly license, a weekly license, and now it's incredibly expensive. And so to be able to really leverage the ND filters and take control of video, you've got to pay for some pretty expensive apps to be able to control your shutter speed and thus your shutter angle and ISO. So that's incredibly frustrating. Not Freewell's fault, not exactly iPhone's fault. Because the camera APIs are wide open for companies to use, it would be nice if Apple came out with a Pro mode that would let you control that yourself and just Sherlock those competitors. Sorry guys, you're getting greedy. I'm all for developers making what they are due, but Filmic Pro, they have not added very many features in the past several years, and they've robbed me of my purchase, and they're wanting a ton of money all the time now. It's too much. Anyway, neither here nor there. put it back in our cute little carry case. Very nice. Let's move on to their other filters. So this is something a little bit simpler. We're not going crazy anamorphic here. We have two filters. They come with these nice little rubber protectors. Let's start with, I think this is the mist filter. Nope, it is the V&D. It's hard to tell them apart. Labels would be nice. Oddly enough, this is not square. I don't know why they didn't make a square. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. But it's easy to align because you just check for the Freewell logo there, it goes on top, and it goes on. If you put it on sideways, it doesn't fit. Put it on the right way, it magnetizes on, and then this just slides right off. Easy peasy. And then we have our V&D, which goes from 5 down to 1. And you can see it cutting the light there. As we're sliding through that, there's very little color shift. This is using Freewell's V&D technology, which they use for professional full-frame cameras, and we're sticking it on a smartphone. And this will allow you to control your shutter angle, so if you're shooting in bright sunlight, you can make sure that your footage doesn't get too choppy. Very nice. The mist filter, to be honest, this is the most useful thing. This is going to smooth out the halation and smooth out a lot of the roughness in the picture, which really has to be done the way that iPhones process video. It's too sharp. This makes everything look a lot smoother. Very nice, smooths things out, I like it. Now if we go full 48 megapixel RAW mode, we can look at the absolute sharpness of these filters. And as you can see, we are not losing any sharpness now. We lost some with the Anamorphic, which is 100% to be expected, not a cop-out at all. That's Anamorphics for you. The mist, even when you're misting, yeah, it smooths it out a little bit. And then finally, we have the most fun part of this kit, and that is the grip. There we go. It's a nice positive contact, matching color schemes. Unfortunately, right here we have the same gross feeling plastic that we had on the case. It would be really nice if this was a grippy material. If I was planning on using this a lot, I would probably stick my own grip on there. And we just have a simple on-off switch. Let's get into our camera app. Now unfortunately, the iPhone doesn't have an API or the capability to have a half click on the shutter. It would be nice if it did, but it's not Freewell's fault that it doesn't exist there. It just isn't a possibility. You turn it on, you press the button, you take a picture. Fantastic. It's a nice grip, a nice feel. I had left this on for days, the battery didn't die. There's just a button cell battery in this, it's not rechargeable, but because it uses Bluetooth Low Energy, it just lasts forever. As you can see on the top here though, we're getting a cold shoe. We're getting 3/4 20s. On the bottom here, 3 more 1/4 20s. And Arca Swiss foot. That's crazy! And then, secret weapon, you pull up on this, it's a selfie stick. And it's all built into the handle. And somehow there is still room for the battery, for the wireless transceiver. And so this does double purpose or triple purpose. It's a grip, it's a shutter release, it's a cold shoe, it's mounting points, it's an Arca Swiss plate, and it's a selfie stick. Man, they put everything into this. What are we looking at for price? This whole kit here with the V&D, the Anamorphic, and the case, we're looking at $300. So you have got to be taking this seriously to want to jump into this whole thing. This is a good case for $30. I would pay 30 bucks for this case. If you like the metal look, now my anodization is worn off of this a little bit, but overall, this is a nice feeling rugged case for 30 bucks. Cases cost too much most of the time. So there are a few different kit options, different color options. You can go gold or blue. And this, yeah, it's kind of expensive in the world of smartphone videography. But every year, our sensors get bigger, our lenses get sharper, and this stuff gets more serious. And Freewell, they're taking this seriously. Yeah, 300 bucks is a lot, but they're definitely giving you $300 of value here. I have a lot of Freewell filters myself. I've bought most of them myself. Each of these cost me $140, $140, $100, $140. When you're looking at the actual quality of filters and how much they usually cost, putting all this stuff together, that's a perfectly normal price in my mind, but just the question is it worth it for smartphone videography? I can't answer that. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you have any comments on this whole system that Freewell has put together. If you want to pick up any of these things, I'm going to have links down in the description below. But until next time, let's go take some photos on the go.